Okay. Well, why don't we just get started and see if anybody else comes along. But today I want to talk a little bit about how this county and this village was founded. It is our 200th anniversary, and as I talked about last time, when I was thinking about what to do this time, I thought, well, let's see if I can talk about how this county and village was formed. And the man that you need to talk about is Nehemiah Ingersoll. Now, most of you know there's an Ingersoll Street. Well, that's because of Nehemiah. He was a man who bought land around here in the early 1800s. He bought 400 acres of land that, well, a little over 150 acres of land, paid $400 for it, that's what I want to say. So he got a buy. And it was land just on the other side of what is now the canal and up into the village. And this was just open land. There was no canal here yet or anything. He just purchased the land. He had lived in Batavia and Elba, and he was kind of working his way north when he purchased the land around here. Soon afterwards, he had a large part of the land surveyed and laid out as a village, the village of Albion. He didn't immediately remove to here, didn't immediately come here, but he did start improving the property around here, thinking he could sell it to incoming people.
Oh, okay.
He and his associates built a large warehouse standing near where the canal is now, at the foot of what we call Platt Street, and a frame building for a store on the corner of Main and what we referred to then as Canal Streets, where the Empire Block stands now. In a struggle for the county buildings, Mr. Ingersoll engaged the debate in competing with the Village of Gaines, because it was at one point competition between what is now the Village of Albion and what was then the Village of Gaines. Gaines was a big deal because it was on the ridge. What catapulted Albion into notoriety was when the canal came through.
Did he know the canal was coming through when he bought the property?
That's a good question. Nehemiah had connections. He was a wise man. He was a speculator. He would buy property like he did here and then sell parts of it to other people. In early 1826, he moved here to Albion to live. He was prominent in affecting the organization of the County of Orleans from the County of Genesee. So Ingersoll was a mover and shaker around here. Nehemiah was the catapult that started Orleans County and the Village of Albion. He also had a brother whose name was Justice Ingersoll. And if you speak to the historian in Medina, they will probably go, oh yeah, Justice Ingersoll. Because Justice Ingersoll was instrumental in pushing Medina. So while Nehemiah was our pusher, his brother Justice was pushing in Medina. So the Ingersolls were a big reason why this county prospered to begin with. He was born in Dutchess County also, and he was a tanner, Justice was. And on the outbreak of war with Britain in 1812, he entered the U.S. Army as an ensign in the 23rd Regiment of Infantry. He served on the northern frontier in several engagements and was in the celebrated charge on Queenston Heights. He was promoted to the rank of captain for his meritorious service. He was wounded in the foot in one of the battles in Canada. Refusing to leave his company and being unable to walk, he mounted a horse and continued with his men. In another engagement, he was shot through the body, the ball lodging in a rib. He refused to have it removed, as he was informed a portion of the rib would have to be cut away, which would probably cause him to stoop ever after as he walked. So he said, no, you're not taking it out. So we're talking tough guys here.
Well,
Man was shot twice, and he's still moving.
yeah, but somebody had to clean his wounds because that can be deadly.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. But it tickles me the way it's written up, that, you know, no, you're not taking that out because I'll stoop when I walk. You know, it tickles me the way it's written up because they are definitely heroes. Okay, that's justice. That's Nehemiah's brother.
We call today tough dumb jocks.
Yeah. The canal was made navigable, and Medina began to be settled as a village. Justice moved there, built a tannery, and transferred his business to that place. So Justice was instrumental in getting Medina moving like Nehemiah was here. His tannery accidentally burned, and then after his business burned and he had other problems in Medina, he said goodbye Medina, moved to Detroit. So Ingersolls, after they lived here, moved to Michigan, which was the frontier. From New York going west, a lot of our early settlers decided to move west, and that was Michigan. So you can see where the Ingersolls, they did what they could do here, and then they decided they wanted to be on the frontier, so they moved to Michigan. And Detroit was the hot spot at that point. I found an obituary of Frank Ingersoll, well known in Albion, died at Rome on Monday. Mr. Ingersoll was the son of the late Honorable Nehemiah Ingersoll, a distinguished citizen of Orleans County and a large landowner in Albion and Medina. The public park at Albion, where the county offices and jail are situated, was the gift of Nehemiah Ingersoll. So where our county buildings are, that was Nehemiah's gift to the county. Okay, you can have that land to put your county buildings on. Mrs. Elizabeth Ingersoll, Frank's mother, gave in 1867 a bequest of $10,000 to the Episcopal Church of Albion. Mr. Ingersoll served during the late war for 2 years and received a severe bullet wound in the side of his head. So another Ingersoll was shot. His wife survives him. The funeral services will be held at the chapel at Mount Albion Cemetery on Thursday at 1 o'clock. So, pardon me?
What year was that?
I don't know. I didn't get it printed out. I knew somebody was going to ask me this.
This Thursday?
Albion was pushed to prosper because of the Ingersolls. And I think that creatively shows why one of our streets is named for Ingersoll. He was a mover and shaker, and so was his family. There are several Ingersolls buried in Mount Albion. Even ones that went on to Detroit were moved back here to be buried at Mount Albion. So the family felt a closeness here as pioneers, and they returned. It says that the wives would come back and enjoy. Nehemiah, when he passed away, his wife came back here to Albion because she enjoyed it so much in Albion. There was a letter written by Justice Ingersoll, the brother, in 1841, endorsed by General Winfield Scott on the 17th of December before forwarding it to the Secretary of War, John C. Spence. Ingersoll's request reads in part, "I do hope and trust, General, that it will be your good pleasure to give me the appointment at this place," this is Detroit, Michigan, "of military storekeeper, as I candidly do not know how to support my family otherwise. You gave it to me before at the last reduction. I lost my place. I did suppose it was permanent. Do, General, give me this situation, foreseeing that I have served my country. I cannot perform manual labor or account for my wounds. So he's asking Scott to help him get a business established in Detroit, Michigan. And he's asking Winfield Scott for his assistance. Judge Ingersoll, having made the mistake of supposing the appointment to be in me, ought not to prevent me from laying his letter before the proper authority. Accordingly, I beg to leave to submit to the Secretary of War with these remarks. So he sent it to General Scott. General Scott didn't have the power to give him what he wanted. So General Scott moved it on. And with these remarks, Judge Ingersoll served gallantly and efficiently in the campaign of the Niagara in 1814 and was disabled by wounds. He, however, has vigor and activity sufficient for the employment in question. His moral character is also excellent. I considered him as having high claims upon the country and the War Department. Scott's reference to Ingersoll's gallant and efficient performance in the campaign of Niagara suggests that Ingersoll served with his command at the Battle of Lundy's Lane in Canada near Niagara Falls. Scott was the most important officer ever to serve in the U.S. Army and served from 1808 to 1861. Astonishingly, he was a general officer for 47 of those 53 years, and during that time was principally responsible for American success in the War of 1812 and the Mexican-American War. So asking for this man's support was a big deal. He knew this man, Ingersoll knew this man, and asked for his help. And this is the man that he asked for help, which is, I say, it's a pretty good plus in your favor to have this man recommend you for a job or to help you establish your own. On the breaking of war with Great Britain in 1812, Justice Ingersoll entered the United States Army as an ensign in the 23rd Regiment of Infantry. He served on the northern frontier in several engagements and was in the celebrated charge on Queenston Heights. He was promoted to the rank of captain for meritorious service. I'm telling you this about his engagement in the War of 1812 and his connection with notable military men because it has to do with how our county was named. Our county became a county in 1825, started in 1824 and actually ended in 1826, but in that time period. And it was named Orleans. Now the reason that I can I've read a lot of things and they say it's either for New Orleans or it's for Orleans in France, French, Duke of Orleans. Well, from what I have read, there wasn't a lot of good feelings between France and the people here during that time period.
Really?
Okay? Like 1813, 14, 15 after the war, there was not a real closeness with France. And that was something that I was surprised at. Because in history, they tell us, you know, France was our ally, blah, blah, blah. Well, apparently at one point they weren't. And when I looked at the information, I thought, I don't think it was named for the Duke of Orleans, France, because there wasn't a whole lot of good feeling. I do think that the Battle of New Orleans was a win for the United States. It said, no, this ends right here, we're stopping this. And the Battle of New Orleans was something that was celebrated on January 8th for years, the success in the Battle of New Orleans. So I think our county of Orleans, now this is my thought, was probably named for New Orleans, for the battle. Nehemiah Ingersoll's brother was in the War of 1812. and fought in the northern district. But at the end of War of 1812, everyone was talking about our win in New Orleans. It was a big deal. But you know how after a war, there are certain things that keep being brought up, that keep being pushed. Hey, did you hear about? Well, I think New Orleans was a big deal because we went in there with a group of Americans, beat the British in a matter of a couple days, and they were out of there. So that makes us look pretty good, that we can chase Great Britain away. So I think New Orleans, more than likely, was the reason that we were named Orleans. Now, if somebody else finds some information, let me know.
I always thought it's strange because there's an Olean the county.
There's an Olean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first trustees of Medina, one of those trustees was Justice Ingersoll. So you can see Justice was a big name in Medina, where Nehemiah was a big name here. Let's see.
I'm just surprised that this wasn't named Ingersoll.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he could have named it for himself, couldn't he? Yeah. Or he could have named Orleans County and the village of Ingersoll. So maybe we lucked out. The county of Orleans, it received its name from Nehemiah and had to do with like I said, honoring Andrew Jackson's victory in New Orleans. So after looking at Orleans County, I'm wondering Albion. Where did they get the name Albion? Albion, anything I can find, means either Britain or the word means white. Now I can't get either one of those to connect to here or anything I've read. But put this in your mind. There are 30 places in the world named Albion. Albion can be found in 7 countries throughout the world. In some countries, the place can be found more than once, like here. There are 2 Albions, New Yorks. There's here and up near Oswego. There is an Albion, New York, because my husband comes from Governor, up north yet. And we would go by Albion, the exit for Albion, New York, and Bill would say, oh my God, look how long we've traveled and we're still in Albion.
I've driven through it too.
And I know there's an Albion, Pennsylvania, because I came from near Erie, Pennsylvania, and there's an Albion, Pennsylvania. There are Albions in Michigan, Indiana, Maine, New York, Pennsylvania, Nebraska, just to name a few states. So Albion was a popular name. Why? I don't know. Do you know, Bill? I don't know either. Like I said, the only thing I can find is it stands for white, or it stands for Great Britain. Now, whether that was to honor the British heritage that we have, I don't know, because there was bad feelings between the United States and Great Britain for a while too. So if anybody finds out, let me know, because there's a lot of places named Albion. And this business with Orleans, General Andrew Jackson led the U.S. to victory in the Battle of New Orleans on January 8, 1815, during that War of 1812. Justice Ingersoll was a captain in the War of 1812 and appointed Indian agent and postmaster in Medina by President Jackson. So there was a close connection between the Ingersolls and a president of the United States at the time. Americans hailed Jackson as a hero for his victory at New Orleans, and for the next half century, his victory on the 8th of January was marked by celebrations across the United States. So January 8th was a big celebration for his win in New Orleans. So Orleans, I think, was a good name. it was supportive, it was United States, it was glory that this county was named Orleans. And amid the crisis created by Napoleon's blockade of Britain, President Adams observed in 1809 that there were widespread fears of a French invasion of the United States. So I don't think you're going to name this county Orleans in honor of the French if you were afraid they were going to invade you, right? So the bad feeling towards the French combined with New Orleans being a good thing, I think is the reason that we were named Orleans. And I don't think the French had anything to do with it. By Napoleon's final defeat in 1815, Jefferson claimed in his correspondence with John Adams that he had always detested Napoleon because he was warring against the liberty of his own country and independence of others. Well, if that was the feeling that was going around, we weren't named Orleans to honor French. Okay, I think that pretty well says we were named for the Battle of New Orleans. The battle was fought between General Andrew Jackson's American troops and Major General Sir Edward Pakenham's British troops. The Americans suffered roughly 250 casualties, while the British suffered 2,000 casualties. The battle was the last major armed engagement between the United States and Britain. The victory became a symbol of American democracy triumphing over European aristocracy. The battle took place after the signing of the Treaty of Ghent, but before Congress ratified it. So you can see the tension. You can see what that time period was like. Winning wars, having information from other countries in Europe that, no, we're not going to bend down to the French. They're not going to take over. We're an independent country. We can have our own way. And I think probably that this idea of naming our area here after significant battles was a way Nehemiah Ingersoll pushed to get the feeling of we are the United States. We are independent. We are our own. We're not run by anybody. And I think Nehemiah pushed this Orleans and Albion. In fact, it says in some place that he was the one who named the county Orleans and pushed for the name Albion for its county seat. So I think that that's probably why we are named what we are. I've got a couple letters. I'm not going to read them because they're too long, but this is a letter that, in fact, the letter itself is on sale on eBay, signed by Winfield Scott, forwarding his endorsement of a disabled War of 1812 veteran's request to be appointed as the military storekeeper of Detroit. The letter that he wrote supporting Justice Ingersoll for the storekeeper. There are different places on the internet that you can find the letter. It was written in 1841. You can find summaries of it. But I think that's quite something that a young man here was supported by General Winfield Scott and supported him enough to write a letter in support of him starting his own business in Detroit. Anybody have any questions?
It sounded like the brothers were in competition with one another.
I think they came from the same family. What do you think? Yeah, I think so. I think they were both movers and groupers, as they say today. I think they both were. They both had the idea that they were going to do what they wanted to do, and Nehemiah did it here, and Justice did it in Medina. So the two bigger cities in the county.
I never understood about the War of 1812. I thought it was lingering feelings from us when we were in 17.
Yeah, sorry, the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, Revolutionary Wars, but actually it was over, maritime.
Yeah,
ships.
a lot of it was,
And
yeah.
Americans weren't allowed to ship to Britain and France.
Yeah, yeah. It was weird, the things that were going on at that time. And you can see why people here in America got upset with being told what they could do and what they couldn't do. And they were upset with Great Britain for quite a while. But Britain didn't want to let go of their colonists either, because they had a hand in this new country. So they didn't want to back off either. Yeah. Anybody else? Well, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. And
You can have tea now.
pardon me?
You can have tea now.
I can have tea now? Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.